Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the core and core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. So it's Monday, and looks like I have 5 things to talk about today, and an intro, so maybe that comes into 6. If you're new to this and just checking in, based on recent commentary on a social media platform, I would just welcome you to whatever you have to have as curiosity about me to be directed towards 2 things that I claim to have identified. See, so that's simple enough, right? 2 things. My biggest personal claim to fame is, in my opinion, identifying the biomechanics of core nutension. Now this is just pointing to it, identifying it. All the science and the data will come, and the math justification will come. But for the Pilates instructor, knowing about it is all that matters, and how to use it to facilitate your aims as a Pilates instructor. So the 2 things are, they're 2, CT and MMP are 2 tools for a survivor's method. That's you, the survivor. That's Joseph Pilates, that was the survivor. And these 2 points of view about core nutention in the body and about the ideal within Joe's original work are whatever I have to offer, and maybe that's nothing or foolish or it's up to you as the observer to evaluate what you make of your experience. That's your simulation. Some line from a movie is coming to me, and it's up to always assess one situation. I think it's from Top Gun. Number 1, the quality of what you do and the order you do it in matters. So that was pretty much a mantra of mine before 1981. When I first encountered Pilates, I was already big into the order of what you do, and the order that you do it in matters. Whether it's carbon or silicon, that means whether it's in your body or your programming. So the quality of what you do and the order that you do it in matters. So when I first read Freeman and Ison's book, well, actually, it was Bob Ferrantino's that told me that they had someone coming to teach Pilates, and before they got here, I went to Freeman and Ison's book because that was the only thing available at the time. And that's the foundational book identifying principles that the world of Pilates pretty much has taken upon itself to be the limit to what Pilates is, and therefore generalized interpretations of combinations of those principles is as accurate as the picture ever gets about Pilates. So, a lot of talk recently with someone using the word comprehensive and wanting to make distinction about comprehensive, and so it has me wondering what would be comprehensive. And like, just to start, all the things that the major elements in the fricassee purport, you know, some program in hundreds of hours to thousands, structured by not only practice teaching, but observing and classroom and all the elaborate attempts at comprehension or comprehending Pilates has in it by major schools. But then, you know, to add to that, where else am I talking about? What does that mean? Well, one of the things to me it means is lists by level, L-I-S-T, plural, lists by level. So knowing a beginning list of Pilates mat exercises, and whether it's the basic 6 or the basic 7 or the basic 10, if they're basic anything and they're a beginner sampling of what Pilates is, I would consider which exercises and in what order. And there's so much that has to be trained that you know about. Just training someone as to what to watch as someone's teaching, meaning observing someone actually teaching and helping them set up filters or flags of what to notice as the whole thing goes by. Because there's a lot that happens right in front of you that only in your interest of becoming that person doing the instruction do you ever find a need or an interest in considering. I say capable of performance, but not in the sense that you have to be able to do something in order to teach it. Because without the ability to extrapolate from what you are able to do into what you can imagine doing if you could, would rob every instructor of being able to embrace any student at their level. Right? It's just that a really good instructor, I think, knows the difference between having been there and the knowledge of the embodiment of the effort to someone that's only pointing to a cave that they've really never been in before. To me, the embodiment as the ultimate authority is not your ability in terms of how much of the spectrum of the performance can you do for yourself or on your own, as much as finding the embodiment of the experience in pursuit of the performance. And then comprehensive opens itself up to all things intellectual and all thinking things in terms of an intellectual perspective of Pilates. And because I've already said, you know, lists by level, it means that I think it's important to acknowledge that Joe's choreography is sequential, and we're all in pursuit of that, no matter how we modify it or apply it to our efforts as a Pilates instructor. But the thinking stuff is all the intellectual stuff especially in the areas where people go get degrees and certificates, showing a capacity of intellectual interpretation that would have you think, indirect reference or pun intended, that would have you think, because we're talking about thinking, that thinking can encompass the subject, which, from within the purview of MMP, which means the point of view of Michael Miller Pilates, which is an ideal point of view of Pilates, that ideal talks about completely coordinating three capacities within the human being, and thinking is only one of the three. And by thinking, I don't mean to be elaborate or dramatic, philosophical, talking about mind. I'm just talking about prefrontal cortex processing, and that has access to sensory data that requires observing to integrate it with the being and the thinking. So in terms of a comprehensive deal with Pilates, there's a lot in good programs where an instructor knows the full sequence out of memory, from memory, and then can filter that by level, so that you can instruct movement not only at a particular level of capacity, but also in a level of sequence that has integrity. Ethics and integrity. So the thinking stuff can never overwhelm the observing stuff that it takes to achieve the experience that MMP points to. That the ideal in Pilates, see, I just take Joe at his word. Where's your evidence? Joe's definition. And I just believe him that contrology is the complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. And that is what it is, and that it is an experience that you can discern. So, a distinction in MMP, perhaps the only distinction that matters, is that MMP points to a sensation, points to an experience. And we'll leave for later what the difference is between sensation and experience, because I really have no idea, but would love to talk about. So, number 3, the title is Finding Pilates in a Gym Class. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because a fellow instructor is talking about a distinction between Pilates and a gym class. And what I would see in common in both of them is that they're both about movement, right? You don't go to a gym class and lay on your back, and you don't go to a Pilates class and lay on your back. Well, you do, but there's movement involved in both. And both are positive oriented, right? And both are done. What? See, that's where about my knowledge of gym class ends. But if I were in anything that was considered to be a gym class, even though I don't know what one is, I would know how to recognize the Pilates within the class. And as a Pilates instructor, that is aware of the definition of the ideal, meaning the definition of MMP, then you at least have a point of reference for how you might recognize Pilates in a gym class, or any class, or anywhere. Recognizing Pilates anywhere. Maybe that'll be the title when it comes up, when I write it into Facebook. Recognizing Pilates anywhere. Because what I've condensed into a definition that yours may be different from, but surely not that different if we're talking about the same thing. If I watched a class and there was movement in it, and the movement went through a progressive pattern of the way the body was bending, I would think, oh, that's like Pilates. Right? So by that I mean a progressive pattern from flexion, extension to side bending, rotation, and torsion. If there's a lack of pattern at all, that's a far cry. And then if there's presence of a progressive pattern, that's much more resonant to the ideal, because that's in Joe's original work. So that's classical, right? That's the reality of the order in Joe's book. What am I talking about here? If there was fluid movement, there would be, okay, there you go. That's just like Joe's film, right? And if the exercises were whole body exercises, very Pilates-esque. If it's not that, if it's an exercise class, it's just doing something that does something muscle specific, right? That's pretty far away from or dissonant to what you see in Joe's original work. His frequency, if you will, because the nature of oscillation or repetition is the frequency that one I'm talking about either resonates with or doesn't. And then if it were whatever, and the instructor is asking the students to listen to what they sense and go into the cave of their awareness, their concentration, their listening, and through what they were observing, made a more focused effort at being concentrated on the purpose of the exercise. Joe's words there at the end, right? So recognizing Pilates anywhere, becomes easy to assess, aware of the ideal and corneal tension in your back pocket. Now I just threw in corneal tension. Why? Because I'm thinking about observing movement and all the heads that are chosen to be somewhere other than where they belong. Because the head belongs in a particular place in a uniform engagement with the rest of the body. MMP thinks so anyway. So number 4. Gosh, how did I do all this? This is such a thing. His original intention. Again, my idealistic, not my idealistic, my ethical. Discerning between everything else out there that it's become in the tsunami of Pilates passion versus his original intention. When you go after that, the presumption is made, I think, in that you can actually get to and identify his original intention, which I think is possible, right? At least to the point that my point of view is of an ideal within the work, whatever your point of view is. And yours may be better than mine. My point of view comes from all of it, of course, but it comes from anybody I ever met that knew Joe, that was running a workshop or making a living off of having known him. For all the anecdotal stuff, it was eerily consistent that without exception they would all talk about Joe as a survivor. You know, they'd say Joe was the survivor. And it almost like wait to throw that statement out there to see at what level you took it to mean or how much you appreciated the depth of that simple statement in his history. So to me, his original intention was to and is to survive. Joseph Pilates was a survivor, and the MMP point of view, in terms of as you're a teacher, and if you want to start at the beginning of the string, that's the word, and the word is attributed to a human being named Joseph Pilates, and by all accounts, he was a survivor. And that his method was survival training, conditioning. And when you just look at the evidence, the rest comes easy, meaning his definition, his promise, and his sequence. His definition, contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. I think he'd have his arms crossed saying, that's as clearly as I can say it. You know, what don't you get? And yet, we know more. There's more thinking going on to acknowledge the capacity of observing and the enigma that comes along with recognizing, observing, as 1/3 of the target as an instructor in coordinating together completely. So I'm not sure I want to be done with that. Know your own point of view. Know your own webpage. Know your own Facebook feed or your Twitter feed. And what you put there is an expression of your point of view. And I think what I'm trying to say there is, for all of everyone else's point of view that you see represented in the tsunami of Pilates passion, don't be disturbed or distraught by whatever is being made of it beyond your understanding of it. Because the wave itself will run its course for its own reasons. And just like fear moving through you in the imagery of Dune, the novel, right? A lot of the wave will pass as well. Without ever really diminishing. Insofar as it will have collectively taken humanity into a deeper understanding of itself because of the conditioning that it applies and the results that you get from it. See, so number 5, and I gotta get out of here and see if I can make this more coherent. Number 5. Can Pilates be commodified? Well, of course, it always has been, is now, and will continue being so. So my note to that is that knowing, what did I say? Knowing what it is matters most. So for however Pilates is commodified, whatever's made of it, or however it's presented as being, and however many much smarter people than me or you tell you what it is, unless they're including the capacity of observing in the experience that you're after, it's much more ephemeral and likely to be dismissed. So, I know, life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking. Geist.